So there's a federal law called the Service Members Civil Relief Act that says you can't evict somebody without verifying that they're in the military because they have certain rights if they're in the military. So we have to do this, what's called the military affidavit, anytime we start the paperwork on an eviction. But normally that's done at the beginning. So I can't speak for your case, but typically they do need to know if they're in the military. Rich?
That's the reason your attorney has to have that application, which will have their social security number, date of birth. I ran into that a year ago.
Yeah.
The attorney slowed me down, awaiting the application info.
Right, because they need to put the social security number in the federal military database to verify that they're not in the military to start the eviction. Okay, yeah. Craig?
When people rent, I have them self-certify if they're in the military or not.
Perfect.
And if they are in the military, I ask for a copy of their orders.
Okay.
That way I get information about the commanding officer.
Okay, you find out up front, and you get the commanding officer. Why is that guy helpful?
They help you run down.
They don't want to get on his bad side, do they? Okay. So oftentimes if there's an issue, you can call him and say, did you know Paul hasn't paid his rent? Paul has to do 200 push-ups and pay the rent by 5 p.m. Okay. All right. Okay, so what other questions do you have for me on evictions? Yeah.
What do the renters have to do as of cleaning up before they leave?
What does a renter have to do? Nothing. Okay. What do we have to enforce what they're supposed to do? We have a contract and we have deposits. So let's say they don't clean up, we can deduct that from a deposit. Or let's say that expenses from their not cleaning up or damaging the place exceed the deposit. We're going to talk about collections next. We can go after them for that based on the contract. Okay. What other questions on evictions? Yeah.
I know with other landlords, but I've had situations where I've got judgments, the tenants and gone, and I get some outfit down in American Fork. They want me to sign it to them. I've never done it because I think in my own mind.
I think you're asking me a collection question, right? You're saying
Exactly.
after people owe you money. So let me get into that in just a second, okay?
Yeah.
Any other eviction questions before we move into collections? Okay, so let's talk about what we do when people owe us money, okay? So when your tenant moves out, he had a $1,000 deposit, he had $3,000 in charges, what letter should you send him? Dear Paul, your deposit was $1,000. You had $3,000 damage. So you owe us $2,000. Please pay immediately or we'll vigorously pursue damages. Okay? And if they don't, what can your contract have in it that allows you to add money? Any of you read the contract and know what I'm talking about? What is it? The 40% clause. Okay? Contracts in Utah can have a clause that says if we have to go to a collection agency or collection attorney, we can add an additional 40%. Or in that case, $800. Now, once it goes to a collection situation, there's two situations. You can use a collection agency, which is what he's asking about. They say, give us your collections, we'll go after people, we'll hound them till we get something. Okay, they may be successful. Most of us prefer to use an attorney, okay? An attorney is you know, I'm not saying that in every case collection attorneys are superior to collection agencies, but a collection attorney can immediately add what?
Attorney's fees.
Attorney's fees. They get a judgment. Why is a judgment better than a collection?
It stays on forever.
Because the judgment stays on for 8 years, but if I had an $800 collection account and an $800 judgment, which of them can garnish my wages? Only the judgment, okay? Collections are just allegations. They haven't been proven. Does that make sense? They're just, we think you're guilty. A judgment is what?
We know.
The court says, you're guilty. I hate to use a word like that. But the real word is responsible. You're responsible for this damages. And so, the landlord's attorney or the collection attorney can garnish. Now, let's talk about garnishing. What can you garnish? Wages is one thing. What percentage of wages? It's about 25% generally. Okay? So I had somebody we did a collection on one time. It took 1.5 years to garnish the wages and get it all back. Okay? So it wasn't fast. It sucked for them, you know, because they missed 25% of their wages for 1.5 years, but you know, it was good for me. What else could you garnish? Why do we ask them for the bank account? Why do we take copies of the check? And why do we ask them for bank account information? So you can garnish that bank account. So let's say they get $5,000 a month. They owe you $5,000. If you've garnished it, maximum you can get is, 25% of their thing. It's going to take a while. But if you time it right, the day after they put their money in the account, you can garnish their account. What percentage of the account can you take?
All of it.
100%. So this is a little trick you need to know. This is why we want to get people's bank account numbers. This is why we prefer electronic transfers, because they've got to give us the routing number and the bank account number. If they're paying us by money order, we don't necessarily ever get the bank account. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're gonna close the bank account.
She thinks they're sophisticated enough to close the bank account, and sometimes they are, but you'd be surprised how unsophisticated some of these people are and how they forget to change their bank account, and boom, their money's gone.
Would just having the information off a check be enough?
Yeah, the check has a routing number and a bank account number on the bottom. Yeah,
Slightly off the subject,
okay.
my tenants deposit directly into my bank account.
Okay, sure.
So they know the numbers of my account.
Yeah.
Is that a problem for me? Could it be?
Could it be? Yes. Have I ever heard of any case where it has been? No. But I think that we are now, I think that this is kind of 1980s style landlording. I think that the 2015 style is that we have their bank account number. They don't know ours. We have their bank account number, and we have a system set up that automatically takes it out. I mean, look at it, there's two reasons. Number one, if you're a tenant and you live in fear of that 10% late fee, if I forget to pay my rent, I'm going to be really wrapped up. So you love to give your landlord the routing number of bank account because it's set it and forget it, you'll never have a late fee. Landlord, you don't have to go knock 4 times and get the rent. So it's really the best practice nowadays is how many in this room have electronic transfers from their tenants? Okay? Not very many. That's surprising. Most rooms we ask it's 50%. Okay? In fact, most good landlord classes we ask it's 50%. I think I have all my tenants but 2, all 17 of my tenants but 2 who prefer to pay late and pay with checks and pay the late fee. But everybody else pays automatically. Yes?
The question I have on that is, I don't ever see their banking information on the electronic transfer service that we use.
Okay, well, you need to fix that then. You need to get that information in paper format, or you need to have access to it. You might just not know how to look for it. You might just ask. But if you use the UAA service, which is uaalandlord.org or uaalandlord.com, you actually print out the piece of paper and have them fill out their bank account and sign authorizing the transfer, and then you have a copy in your file. I like that because then you have it when you need it.
I've used that service.
Okay.
They've done it.
Yeah, I don't like it electronically. I like it, but I think you can still probably access it electronically.
I haven't seen anything.
Send them an
on
email,
it.
say, how do I find it out? I need it for collection purposes. They have it stored somewhere.
So what you're saying is we can request the bank to automatically transfer from their account to my account?
How many of you receive a payment or pay a bill electronically every month? It's the same thing.
Well, would they deposit to our account?
But who allowed them to? You gave them a voided check, you signed and said, I want it put in my account. So it's very similar. What the tenant does is says, I want to pay rent electronically, here's my bank account, here's my permission to do it, and then you set it and forget it. It's really smooth. Really smooth. Okay, yes, Becky?
Question is, for the lawyer fees,
Yeah,
when for a judgment,
yeah.
do we pay those fees up front, or do they get it from the?
So it depends on your relationship with your attorney. Some of you pay your attorneys up front. I mean, I'd say most of you. You pay a flat fee of what? What does it cost you to do an eviction? $600. Some of you have an annual fee with an attorney that you pay them an annual fee, and then they do all your evictions and such. So it depends on what type of arrangement you have with your attorney.
So it isn't an additional cost to get a judgment?
It's usually a $75 filing fee to get a judgment, and some attorneys just add it to the balance. Other attorneys bill you for that fee. It depends. Okay, so 2 rules of collections. The number 1 rule is to get nothing you should. do nothing, okay? So if you want money, don't do nothing. If somebody owes you money, give it to a collection attorney, get something started. It's like a pipeline. If you put 10 things in the end, eventually you're going to get 3 or 4 out the other end, okay? So, you know, good collection attorneys can get you as much as 33% or higher, okay? 50% of tenants owe you money, guys, you'll never get a dime, okay? And that's rule number 2. You can't get money out of turnips, so stop renting too. You understand what I'm saying, right? Some of us have rented to people who we shouldn't have. Okay, and they owed other landlords money and they never had any money and we evict them in shock, guess what? We're never going to get it done. But if I rented to somebody that life was on a decent trajectory and all of a sudden they have a crisis, their car breaks down, they lose their job, their health deteriorates, okay, what's their trajectory for the next little bit? In the toilet. And when do you want to try to collect from them? When they're living out of their car, that doesn't work, okay? So what you need to do is be patient and recognize that the average rental collection takes 3 years, okay? So they go like this for a while, and I don't know if you knew this, but during this last recession, the average time it took to find a new job once you lost one was, ironically, the same amount that your unemployment was, which was 99 weeks. The average was 2 years. Okay? Once your unemployment ran out, people found jobs. But so 2 years later, what happens to their trajectory? Starts going like this, and then our attorney who looks at them every 6 months, they finally have a job. Let's start garnishing wages. Let's start leaning assets that they're recovering. You know, you don't want to slam them all at once and get them to quit their job and give up. But you know, you slowly start and you go negotiate with them and you say, let's start a payment plan instead of garnishing, because garnishing is just extra fees. Okay? So those are the collection issues. Now, I'm going to just close on the third topic, bankruptcy. Then I'm not an attorney. Okay? The only thing I know about bankruptcy is if I ever have one, I do what? Call an attorney. Okay? So there is what's called the 90-day stay on a bankruptcy. Let's say my landlord starts an eviction. On the last day before I'm going to be locked out, I could go file a bankruptcy, and then I could give the landlord a notice that I've got 90-day get-out-of-jail-free card. Okay? Basically, you can't evict me for 90 days. Now, the new federal law says your attorney can go in and quash that, lift. It's called the stay, the 90-day automatic stay. Lift that. So that's why you need an attorney. Otherwise, you're going to have to sit there for another 90 days. Okay. Now, what other? I'll try to answer questions. Yeah.
We had a resident that filed bankruptcy for a second time.
Yeah.
And so the judge verbally committed the resident to not stiff us.
Yeah.
He was going to forgive a lot of other debt.
Yeah.
He committed the resident to pay us
Okay.
all the back rent plus.
Okay.
catch-up.
Did it work?
And he did.
Okay.
And then they left
Okay.
to find a less expensive housing. But
Generally, if I file a bankruptcy but I'm current on rent, generally the bankruptcy court will allow me to keep that lease and stay there as long as I continue to pay rent. If I'm behind on rent, sometimes, like in your case, the bankruptcy attorney will say housing is the top priority. So let's make housing we won't make you pay anybody else, but you got to pay your landlord. But you usually have to have an attorney to even go into court and deal with those bankruptcy people. It's more complicated than most of us can deal with. So, yeah.
This is not specifically about evictions, but last year, the UAA fought and we beat the convicted felon becoming a protected class. Is that a dead issue, or is that?
Well, you know, a lot of people think that there should be more protected classes, okay? You know, whether it's sexual orientation or military or criminals as a protected class. I think that we're there at sexual orientation. I mean, I see it coming nationally, don't you? Okay, so what if Utah does it a year or two in advance? We're probably, it doesn't hurt us that much, okay? Some of these other things, I don't think will ever come to Utah. I don't think criminal will ever come to Utah because our legislature is just not going to let us be pushed around like that. Okay? There's 2 or 3 places in the country. In California, in fact, they had it for years. And even in California, they were able to repeal it. You used to not be able to discriminate against sex offenders. And even the legislature there said, yeah, we see the error of that, and they fixed it. So. All right, well, thank you. We'll stick around for a minute. I apologize. We will get Kirk Jr. here next time. We're sorry. Hopefully it's not our fault. Now, hopefully everything's okay with him. But thanks so much for coming. Don't leave any of those cookies back there, please. And the pop, be sure to take the cookies and the pop on your way out. Thank you. And if you haven't signed in, go ahead and sign in so we know you're here. The inspections. The fair housing, that's 4 units. Less than 4 units. Protected class. Can't discriminate against race, color, gender, sexuality, all of that stuff.
It's a PhD in history. You don't have to do anything. My math teacher, PhD.
You're exempt. Thank you. I sure enjoy it.
So actually, I came very close to you.
They're fun, aren't they? Oh, thank you.
I have a neighbor that he went back to,
My first house in that basically was a great lifestyle for us. We could live in a nicer neighborhood, bigger place.
That's a good school. They have one of the best.
I think the danger is you gotta be really this. You gotta make sure somebody.
No. They had great, super professionals. We need more than that.
And I think that you have to understand. There's going to be ways.